this video, we will be talking about some of the requirements for this course for Survey of Church History, and we will be exploring those requirements in a little bit of detail. I would encourage you to really take a chance to look over the syllabus more fully in Canvas. Provides a little bit more detail than we'll be going through here. Certainly, if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me. Let me know what I can do to help you as you go through this course. If you have questions about the assignments, what's due when, those kind of requirements, please feel free to reach out to me. I really want to help you succeed in this course. But what is this course? Now, I think probably the title communicates a good overview of what we're going to be doing, right? It's a survey of church history. So in so doing, we'll be looking at church history, the history of Christianity from its origins to the present. Most of our attention will be from the 2nd century on, but we'll spend some time talking about the backgrounds of Christianity, where it came from, in what the background, what the world, the Greco-Roman world was like, some precursors in Judaism, right? Really not much background in 1st century, but we'll cover that, and then a lot of our focus will be on the 2nd century to the present. In that exploration, we will be examining individuals, we'll be examining movements, we'll be talking about beliefs or teachings, as well as religious practices. Now, we're talking about almost 2,000 years worth of church history. And even if we include some of the backgrounds, we're going about 200, 300 years beyond that. So obviously, when we call it a survey of church history, we are by nature suggesting this is going to be brief. It is not going to be a very in-depth examination of many things. Instead, it's going to be like a little bit here, a little bit there, about all sorts of things. Because I want you to get a sense of church history, not an in-depth examination of any one particular aspect. So, some places will expand, will take longer. Some places we won't take as long. A lot of that is idiosyncratic. It's based on what I might think is important for us to explore. And I think that part of what I want to do in this course is, through the readings, through the lectures, provide you with a foundation of the overview of church history, right? A narrative from the beginnings to the present, but maybe encourage you to consider exploring some of these things more fully, that maybe there is something here that is going to spark your interest, spark your curiosity, a particular person, particular teaching, maybe a reading that you might say, oh, hey, I would like to read this more fully. So, it's going to be brief, but hopefully it will provide you with some interesting examinations of that history. This course is also asking you to think critically about contemporary Christianity. It's very easy for contemporary Christians to fall into the trap of we do things exactly as the 1st century Christians did, that there hasn't been any change. In reality, of course, that doesn't happen. Right? Just the fact that we live in the 21st century suggests that we're going to do things differently than the 1st century Christians did. A very simple example of going to a church building, driving there in an automobile, is not something that 1st century Christians did. So when we think about contemporary Christianity, we have to recognize that we do practice Christianity in some slightly different ways. So we'll be talking about, as we will talk about in an overview, the overview video of history, particularly church history, we're going to be looking at continuity and change. There are some things that are the same, some things that have changed. And one of the things we want to do is critically think about contemporary Christianity and say, okay, here are the things we do today. Here are the things that we believe today. Is that coming from, um, this long line of church history? Is it coming from Scripture? Right? Is it coming from the church's tradition? Is it coming from the culture? Right? Are there things from the culture that have shaped Christianity? And I think also that encourages us to think about, are those changes positive ones or negative ones? Have they positively impacted Christianity, or have they negatively impacted Christianity? So it's not just learning people and places and dates and things like that. It's also for us to think about, all right, now that we have this background of how Christianity has developed, let's look at our contemporary experience. Let's look at our contemporary practice and beliefs and how that um, both reflects the history of Christianity and is something different than the history of Christianity in other times. So hopefully we'll be accomplishing these things as we go through this course. There are two textbooks for this course. Justo Gonzalez's The Story of Christianity, volumes 1 and 2. Excellent survey books. Very readable, engaging. Professor Gonzalez, I think, has done an excellent job in really encompassing the history of Christianity, but doing it in a way that is engaging and readable. So hopefully it won't just be okay, I have to read this because of this assignment, but hopefully, it'll be an enjoyable experience reading about these things. And so these two works are the textbooks for the course. If you haven't gotten them already, you need to get them soon because there are some assignments from the textbooks that will be due soon, even this first week. Volume 1, of course, you need to get sooner than Volume 2. So if you have to get one at a time, get Volume 1. Volume 2, of course, will be more towards like the middle of the course is when you need to have that. But get those as soon as possible. And if for some reason there is a delay in getting them, please get in contact with me because there are some reading quizzes that are out of these textbooks, so you need to have them to do those reading quizzes. There are other assignments that you can be doing without the textbooks if you've been getting the textbook, there's a delay on getting the textbooks. So there's still other assignments that you can keep up with, and then we can go back and complete some of the other assignments. This course will operate in a pretty chronological order, meaning that we will start at the beginning of Christianity, as I mentioned a little bit before, to do some background work, and then we will gradually move through the history of Christianity. Sometimes we will maybe group some time periods together, specifically kind of in that medieval Middle Ages period. So we'll be looking at a couple of centuries together, as opposed to, some other classes where we'll just be looking at like this is the 2nd century, and this is the 3rd century, and the 4th century. And then the Middle Ages will be like the 5th for the early Middle Ages, the 5th through the 9th century, and then the 9th through the the 13th century for the later medieval period. So a couple places we'll group some time periods together, but largely we'll be taking a chronological path through the course. And as we do so, there is a basic organization, a basic framework that I will be using in each of these periods. First of all, we will talk about items or people or developments that are related to politics. How did the church respond to the political situations of its time? And on the flip side, how were the politics of the time affected by Christianity? Certainly in the early centuries, more often than not, the political situation that Christians found themselves in had more of an impact on them than Christians on the politics. So we'll be looking at, for example, in the second and third century, political developments related to persecution. How the different Roman emperors treated Christians. But as we get into the Middle Ages, it will be more, right, the religious influence on the political sphere. So we'll be talking about that, so as we go through each of those time periods, we'll spend time talking about politics, um, what are some cultural and societal developments. Now, that is kind of a very specious breakdown, right? As if politics is something outside culture and society, which it's not. But when I think about culture and society as a distinct category from talking about politics, I'm thinking more about things like the way people view the world around them, right? The way Christians thought about how can we interact with the world? Should we interact with the world? Um, the way Christians influenced literature and music, not so much in a church setting, but an outside setting. What was the relationship between the church and philosophy, right, in those early centuries? How did Christians view Greek philosophy? So that's kind of where I'm making those distinctions. But there will be times throughout the course where a specific subject could fit in a political overview or could fit in more the cultural overview, and vice versa. So, sometimes the division is a little, it's basically how I felt I should frame it, right? I'm going to frame this more in the political discussion. I'm going to frame it more in the culture and society discussion. But I'm making somewhat of a distinction there between those two subjects. So we'll first talk about the political, then we'll talk about the cultural and societal, and then we'll talk about doctrine. What specific doctrines are developing or changing in this particular time period? Are there new doctrines being developed that maybe didn't exist in previous centuries? So again, that continuity and change. We won't be spending time talking much about doctrines that aren't changing. So, if a doctrine, let's say something like monotheism, right? We'll briefly touch on monotheism in the backgrounds class because of, the importance of Judaism and its monotheistic view of the world in contrast to the polytheism of Rome. But we're not going to talk about monotheism every time we talk about doctrine in every century. Now, sometimes we will talk about it if there's something specifically different, right? So the doctrine of the Trinity, right? That God is, yes, one, but three, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We'll talk about it at different times. Here are the ways Christians are struggling to figure out what does that mean? What does it mean when we say God is one, but he's also three? And we'll also talk about at different times, sometimes that rejection of that. Certain groups that are kind of under the Christian umbrella that say, no, there's just one God, a Unitarian view of God. And that does bring to mind something important to say here is that In our discussion of the survey of church history, or the history of Christianity, we are using Christianity in a very broad way. So there are going to be some times where we might say, from our own personal position, well, I don't know if that's specifically Christian. But if a group thought of itself as Christian in specific time periods, we'll probably include it for an understanding of how Christianity is changing, because sometimes it changes in ways that we might not approve of. So we're going to be using Christianity and Christian very, very broadly to talk about it in more of a sociological way or a cultural way, rather than necessarily a very distinct theological way that is concerned about very succinctly defining this is what it means to be Christian. And so that when we get to doctrine, there'll be a lot of times where we'll bring up and talk about some doctrines that may or may not align with Scripture. But they were teachings that people who had identified as Christians believed at various times. Christianity, however, is not just about beliefs, it's also about practices. And so we'll be talking about the different practices. Sometimes people use the term rituals of Christianity. Here, too, a lot of the focus will be on change rather than continuity. So, there's going to be some times that we talk about the development of communion, or sometimes referred to as the Eucharist, or it becomes known as the Mass. We'll be talking about those changes, and then sometimes we won't, because there won't be hugely significant discussion or thought or changes that take place with communion. So, at various times we'll be looking at practices that are changes to what was before, right? Communion is something that's practiced through the history of Christianity, but at times it's changed. At times certain things have been emphasized. And then there'll be new practices we'll talk about. Something that again is started up. Right? This wasn't really a practice that existed before this point that we know of historically. So, here again, we're looking more at change than strict continuity. At various times, we'll also be talking about the geographic spread of Christianity moving into other areas. Sometimes we won't, but sometimes we will pay attention to how Christians are going to other places, sharing the message of Christianity, converting people to to Christianity. And so we'll take a look at that as well. In that exploration, there are a couple of objectives we are looking to achieve. So at the end of this course, the hope is that you will be able to do the things listed here on the screen. Talk about some of the people, some of the texts or the writings, events, some dates, not a lot of dates. There are relatively few dates that you will need to know. Some dates, it's great. Hey, if you pick it up, that's great, but it's not necessarily going to be on an exam. But hopefully at the end, you'll be able to talk about cogently some important people, some important developments. To be able to explain those developments, how things changed, how the politics changed, differences in doctrine, so how particular teachings about Jesus changed over the course of history. Same kind of thing with like communion. To think about the claims people make about Christianity in its history. And, think about, well, are those true? I do, when people make claims about, well, we've done it as the apostles did it. Well, is that true, or has there been these developments? To be able to discuss the influence of history, philosophy, politics, other aspects of culture on Christianity, how have those things changed Christianity? And the flip, how did Christianity influence those things as well? We'll probably emphasize more Western culture than Eastern culture, but I'm again trying to be a very broad overview and not just focus on Western Christianity because there is so much more to Christianity than just the experience in the West. But we're going to tend to privilege Western Christianity. We're going to tend to privilege Protestantism over Catholicism, Catholicism over Orthodox Christianity. But I hope that we'll get a very broad overview as well. Now, it'd be great if at at the end of the course, I could say, can you do these things? And you say, yes, I can do those things. And then I give you an A. That'd be great if we could do that. Not going to work like that, unfortunately. So there are going to be some assessments. There's going to be some assignments that are going to help you demonstrate to me, show me that you can do these things. And the basic ones that will be throughout this course are reading quizzes, discussion boards, reflective essays, and 3 exams. Now, we're going to talk about some of those assignments here in a little bit more detail. More information is found in the syllabus, and certainly I'm willing to answer any questions that you have on that as well. So let's talk about reading quizzes. The reading quizzes will be available online in Canvas. Each module that there are reading quizzes, some weeks there are only 1, most weeks there's 2, will be in the weekly modules. Each quiz is 4 multiple choice questions based on the reading. You will have about 10 minutes to take the quiz. The quizzes. You can take them anytime during the week, but when you sit down to take them, you'll have about 10 minutes to take them. In doing the reading quizzes, there is a key things to know page on Canvas in the Welcome to Class module that will give you a list of items, people, texts, developments, battles, right? All sorts of different things. Those are the things I want you to focus on in your reading. So I would suggest having it on a screen nearby, printing it out. It's pretty long, so you might not want to print it out, but having it close by as you're reading so you can highlight or notice or underline or whatever you want to do, whatever is going to be best for you to do, so that you can highlight in the reading or notice in the reading, okay, these are the items I really need to focus on. Again, I want you to read all of it, but these are the things that are going to be focused on. And the quizzes, the questions from the quizzes will be drawn from that key things to know page. And basically, I'm just looking for you to have an overview of those items, right? What does Gonzalez say about, this particular item? It's not meant to be some obscure fact, that you're going to overlook, right? There aren't really footnotes in Gonzalez, but I'm not trying to go for that kind of thing of, right, I'm going to pull something from a footnote that isn't going to be a major item in the text. So, as you read, pay attention to those items. Those are going to be the key items to know for the reading quizzes. But this is also going to be helpful for the exams as well, because a lot of the exam is going to want you to talk about some of these big items. So hopefully in preparing for the quiz, you will know these items. Um, in most cases, there's a lot more there than 4 items in each of the chapters. So it's going to be it's not going to be a situation where you only have to know a little bit, right? I have a question bank, and it's the computer's going to pull out 4 questions, and it could be on any of those items. There's also a schedule in the Welcome to Class module, which will list what chapters you need to read for each of the quizzes. Again, feel free to get in contact with me. Certainly let me know if you are having difficulty getting the textbook, so we can make sure that you have the opportunity to take those quizzes once your textbooks come in. Discussion board posts. Each weekly module has a discussion questions, a discussion board. You need to do 3 posts each week. There are at least 3 questions, sometimes more, each week. Pick one of those questions, respond to it. Your first post has to be at least 100 words, and then respond to 2 other posts. That could be, depending on what you say, I might respond to you. I'm not going to respond to everybody every week, but I'll try to respond to a couple people, just so people have the opportunity to have people respond to them. If you respond to one of my responses to your questions, or to your comments, I should say, that's perfectly fine. You can respond to that post, that counts. You can respond to other students, that's perfectly fine. If you are the kind of person that wants to get those discussion posts out of the way, right? I want to get that done. I know I got to do it this week. You can respond to 3 of my questions, and that will be fine. I would prefer interaction between students, but sometimes there are students that, they wait till later in the week to do their discussion posts, and you might be someone that says, I want to get these done. So, you can respond to the other questions for a total of 3 posts if you would prefer that. I would ask, try to get your first post done by Wednesday at the end of the day, so that people have other people to respond to, right? So try to get those done earlier in the week, by the middle of the week. But all of the posts are due by Sunday, the following Sunday, by the end of the day. I'm looking for you to, really think about saying something significant, saying something substantial. It's easy to do that in responding to one of my questions, because you have to use 100 words. But when you respond to other students, try to avoid simply agreeing, saying I agree. That obviously isn't 25 words. But also try to avoid, simply restating what they've said. Think about, okay, how can I take what they've said and maybe move it further along? Maybe say something more than what they've said. So think about how you can further the conversation, so to speak. All right, so think about those things. So that's basically the discussion posts. And I would ask this first week, take some time to introduce yourself in the student introduction board. Kind of introduce yourself to me, so I get to know you some, and introduce yourself to your other students, your fellow students, I should say. So they get to know you as well. Talk about who you are. Give us some insight into, where you're from. What your interests are, hobbies, family life. Where you are in your your degree plan. Are you close to being done? Are you just getting started? Right. So let us know who you are this first week. Another set of assignments that you'll need to complete are reflective essays. There are 5 of them. They are based on primary sources in Christianity. The links, they are, again, all available online. The links are in weeks 4, 7, 9, 11, and 13. I tried to have them so they're not due the same week that exams are. Basically, what you will need to do in each of the 5 essays is read a specific source from the history of Christianity, usually a section of a source, not a huge long reading. Provide a summary of that reading. What was the author trying to say? And then your analysis of it. Do I agree with this? Do I disagree with this? Is this biblical? Is this not biblical? If we accepted this, what kind of changes should we make to Christianity? So it's not just saying I agree with it, I disagree with it. It's maybe saying more about that, right? I disagree with this. Well, why? What is it that this author has said? Is it wrong because it's not biblical, or is it wrong, or is it right because it supports what Jesus said in such and such? All right, so it's not just about summary. It is about analyzing it as well. There is a sample reflective essay that is available on Canvas under modules that hopefully gives you an idea of how I want it to be balanced. About half, it's about 500 words, is 500 words minimum is what you need to do. And about half of that summary, about half of it analysis. So take a look at that example, which isn't about one of the readings, it's a different reading, or it's actually another section of the first reading. But provides you hopefully a good example of what I'm looking for. So that's the reflective essays. There are 3 exams in the course, 2 unit exams, and then the final. The 2 unit exams are due it'll be available in week 6 and week 12. All of the exams are open book, open notes. They are essay questions. There will be study guides, that will give you, ideas about what the topics potentially could be, the kind of information you should know to talk about. So certainly, you might think, oh, open book, open notes, this shouldn't be a problem. Well, they're essays though. So you're going to have to pull that information together into something cohesive and, comprehensible, so that, you can present it in a, format that's understandable. So, I would encourage you to take that study guide, to take the key things to know, and have that material together, and have, the information at your fingertips so you can write those essays instead of trying to page through notes or trying to page through the book. Outside of your book, outside of your notes, you should not use any additional sources. So, make sure that you're only using the book, your notes, and your brain for those assignments. The final exam will be similar. It's a little bit longer. There will be a part that is comprehensive, asking you to, look at the entirety of Christian history, but then a part that's more like the unit exams. So there'll be similar format, right? Essays, open book, open notes. There'll be a study guide for that, but there's a part that is comprehensive. So those 3 exams are a part of that. The last piece to the grade is what I refer to as engagement or participation. Each week there will be a series of video lectures that you will need to watch. that are providing this information about politics, culture, and society, doctrine, practice, geographic spread. And so each week, to demonstrate that you have watched those videos, you will need to submit your notes or a summary of at least 500 words. Don't just copy the PowerPoint slides, right? These notes are going to provide you the information you need to take the exams. So, this is helpful to you as well. But this is basically kind of like, demonstrating you're in class, so to speak, right? If you were in a face-to-face class, you would be sitting there taking notes, and I could see that you were there and present. Well, this is demonstrating that you are present for those classes. Um, this is kind of the attendance for the semester. But with that, I should note a couple things, that if you don't participate in the first 14 days of class, you will be administratively withdrawn. And there is one change here I'm going to make to a slide because this is inaccurate. So if you haven't participated in the first 14 days administrative withdrawal, if at any point during the course you haven't participated for 21 calendar days, you will receive a W and an administrative withdrawal as well. So make sure that you're keeping up with the work. By all means, reach out to me if you're having difficulty. So basically, the grading breaks down like this. There's 1,000 points possible in the course. I usually do my courses out of 1,000 points for a couple of reasons. First, because there is a it's math, addition and subtraction. You don't have to worry about percentages and what percentage is this, what percentage is that. At any point in the semester, you can know, all right, here's what I have, here's my total points. How many points do I need to accumulate in order to get an A in the course, a B in the course, a C in the course? So that's part of what that is. And then, no one particular assignment is going to totally destroy your semester. So if you miss a few reading quizzes, that's not going to ruin your semester. If you miss a couple discussion boards, it's not going to ruin your semester. If you do poorly on the first unit exam, that's not going to destroy your semester. Now, if all these things begin to accumulate, then yes, it's going to have an impact on your semester. But each little individual piece by itself isn't going to destroy your semester. Here's the grading scale: 1,000 to 900 points is an A, 899 to 800 a B, etc. So that gives you an idea of, okay, this is what I need to get in order to get an A, B, C, etc. Again, this information is also provided in the syllabus. If you have a grading concern, right, you think that maybe there's something that wasn't graded properly, feel free to get in contact with me about that. University policy is you have 3 days after it has been graded. I try to grade very quickly. The quizzes are self-grading, so you should receive your grade right after it has been completed. But with the notes, with the reflective essays, it's obviously going to take me some time to review those. But I try to get that information back to you, the grades back to you, some feedback within 7 days. Most times sooner than that, but I try to get it back to you within 7 days. You have 3 days after that in order to, kind of get back. For example, if I grade a reflective essay and I said, well, you should have talked about such and such, and you look at it and say, well, I did. It's right here. You get back to me and say, could you please review this last paragraph? I think that this was what you were looking for. I'll take a look at it. I say, oh yeah, that is what I was looking for. I missed that. All right, here's your new grade. So, feel free. I'm human. I make mistakes. I miss things, misread things. So please feel free to do that. But just remember, you have that 3-day window. Academic honesty is very important, not only in this course but in life. I mean, essentially, um, academic honesty is about your integrity. And as Christians, we should be living lives of integrity. So please make sure that in anything you submit, you are not submitting someone else's work uh, as your own. Uh, with the assignments in this class, um, I'm not looking for you to do outside research. There are some obviously there's reading in the textbooks that you're doing. There's the primary source readings you're doing, um, but you shouldn't necessarily be using sources outside of that. If you have questions about something, by all means, come to me. All right, let me help you work through it instead of picking something else up and ending up plagiarizing, right? Taking somebody else's words and using them as your own. So do your best work. If you need to cite anything, make sure to cite it. If you have questions about how you give credit to somebody else, citation is about giving credit. So if you have questions about how to do that, let me know. I'm more than willing to help you through that. So do whatever it takes to keep your integrity. If you have a documented learning condition that requires academic accommodations, you probably already know to get in contact with the Center for Disability Services. Nicole Fussell serves as the director of that. The information is available in the syllabus. If you need the syllabus or any other information in another format, um, Center for Disability Services is going to help you work all that. They're going to provide you with a note, or they're going to reach out to me with information about what accommodations you need. And so we will work together to make sure that you start the road to success as early as possible so that you can succeed in this course. So make sure that if this applies to you, you take care of that as soon as you possibly can. Since this is an online course, a lot of the ways, probably most of you will contact me is by email. Um, and that's perfectly fine. I try to respond to email quickly. I try to respond within 24 hours. If you've not heard from me within 48 hours, feel free to re-email me, just in case something got lost and the message didn't get to me. I try to respond quicker than that, but certainly sometimes it might be a little bit longer than that. So certainly if you haven't heard from me within 48 hours, get back in contact with me. However, I am in my office a lot of times during the day, but specifically 11:15 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. That's Central Time, Monday through Thursday. And I'm available to talk on the phone, to do a video call, video conference. If you happen to be in the Montgomery area and want to stop by my physical office, that's perfectly fine as well. So feel free to reach out to me. Certainly, if you want to call by Zoom or Google Meet or something like that, we'll need to set up a time to make sure that it works there. To let me know, hey, I need to talk to you tomorrow at 11:30. Okay, great. I'll make sure to be ready to Zoom at 11:30. So giving me a heads up, that'll certainly help. If you just want to call, the phone number is in the syllabus as well. I have a lot of other availability if that time doesn't work for you for whatever reason. So please let me know, if you need to talk to me one-on-one, you know, um, at a specific time, let me know, and we'll work to make it happen. I'm looking forward to a great semester. Please feel free to reach out to me, talk to me. Let me know what I can do to help so you can succeed in this course, because I really hope that everyone will do well, and I hope you will have an enjoyable time.